Good evening, everyone. Okay, a topic that we'll be discussing tonight, it says the mystery around this thing called life. There's a mystery there. So we need to unveil the mystery. So have you ever asked yourself a question? Who controls everything? Who controls our day-to-day lives? Is God in direct control of what happens in my life? Is it God's will that some people are poor and some are rich? Are there certain patterns that God has created for us to follow, which lead us to different destinations of our lives? Have you ever asked yourself these questions when you meditate or when you just think to yourself, oh my word? So now I've been thinking around those, and tonight I'm going to be discussing such. And that is why I titled the theme of this session, the mystery around this thing called life. All right, I'm going to take it back to creation. In the book of Genesis, for those that read the Bible, because most of us are Christians, I understand. So now, when we go back to the book of Genesis, chapter 1, it tells us about the story of creation. What God created, how He created, and what not. So now, when I summarize it, God created the earth, God created light and called it day, God created darkness and called it night, God created the moon and the stars, God created the sun, God created the waters, God created vegetation, God created the animals, all the living creatures, and last but not least, God created a man. And now we want to see, because from verse 28 to 30, it unveils now the instructions said by God to men. Because when we're listening, He was just creating. If you read the book of Genesis, He's creating this and that. He's creating this and that. And then now when He created man, He gave certain instructions. Now for Bible readers, you will notice that on from verse 28 to 30, it is whereby God gives authority and rulership to men now, to add rulership over all those things that He created. Do you understand? So now I wanted us to read specifically, because we can't read the whole chapter. I wanted us to read verse 28 to 30. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant of the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. Do you follow me? Okay, I have audience in the studio, but they will not be seen. But I see them, and I'm going to interact with them. You will see. All right. So now, if you will see that on these verses that I've just read, God is directing man. God is giving rulership and authority to man. Now, what I realized is that God enjoys, seemingly to me, God enjoys seeing man in charge. One of the reasons why He created man is because he wanted to see men in charge, men doing things. So it is so clear to me that God enjoys to see us in charge. When I say men, I'm not referring to men. I'm referring to human beings that God created. So now, before the fall of man, for those that follow the whole book of Genesis, you will see that we were given full authority and control over everything. It was just that. But after the fall of man, when I try to check it, I feel like after the fall of man, we were given authority and rulership, but on top of everything that we were given, we were also, it doesn't go alone anymore after the fall of man. It also goes with hard labor now. It's no longer that a dominion alone, but it goes with hard labor. That is after the fall of man. But what I wanted to highlight tonight is that after the fall of man, God did not withdraw the control that he had given us. He did not withdraw the authority that he had given us. We still have everything. We still need to control everything that does not have breath, everything that is not a human being, if I may say. So now, but we must just know that after the fall of man, it included hard labor. There's different kinds of hard labors for females and for males. You will see it when you read the book of Genesis. So now, how do we access or gain this control of the things that God said we must control? How do we access that control? That is the big question. How do we access dominion? Because everything that I'm talking about tonight, it goes around dominion, dominating everything on earth. Now check the mystery. Because the reason why I said the mystery around this thing called life is because it's mysterious. It's hard to just get it. Do you understand? You need to search it. You need to read books. You need to know history. You need to understand things. You need to have wisdom in order for you to get into it. The mystery around this thing called life. Now, as you all know, I wrote a book. I'm an author. If I can refer to my book called My Cross, The Journey to Conception. There's chapter 9 of the book where I discuss a mystery. The mystery in conception. Though tonight I'm not talking about that, but I figured that the book is relevant for the subject, though it's not wholly about conception. Let me read the last paragraph of the introduction of the book. The big question in this whole journey is this: how do babies come into being? Did God just give a principle, then we just follow? Okay, did God just give a principle and then people just follow that principle or process? Or is he directly in control in terms of who should the principle work for or not? Can childbearing, even conception, be compared to eating? Some people eat a lot and food makes them overweight. But some eat the same measure of food and their weight is just normal. Does God use conception and barrenness to fulfill his will? My research has shown that conception for some people is just a matter of having sex and they just conceive. And for some, it takes a miracle or never. It's a mystery. So now, in chapter 9, I have discussed that. I like that part of food because we always struggle with that. That some people eat a lot. You'd find out that we eat junk. At Reyes, we all eat junk. We eat pizzas, we eat everything. But some remain the same. But some gain a lot of weight. It's mysterious, honestly. So now, in chapter 9 of the book, that is the mystery in conception now. You will see that I've discussed certain principles. I've discussed things that God has put into place that will automatically reveal a certain system that will control things in life. Do you understand? So now, if I may read chapter 9, page 31 of the book, My Cross. How does a baby come into being biologically? Pregnancy starts with fertilization, when a woman's egg joins with a man's sperm. Fertilization takes place in a fallopian tube that links an ovary to the uterus. We're studying bio now. If the fertilized egg successfully travels down the fallopian tube and implants in the uterus, an embryo starts growing. General knowledge says this process takes place when a male and female having reached adolescent stage, have sexual intercourse during ovulation period. This is basically a principle for conception. Anyone that follows the principle experiences the same results. Now, do you follow me? Audience. So now, the reason why the author is saying it is mysterious here, because this is just a simple principle that God has placed for every human being, that when the egg does that and that, between a male and a female, a baby will come into being. It's supposed to happen like that to everyone. God has placed that principle. But now the mysterious thing is that the principle doesn't just work for everyone. There are people that struggle to conceive a baby like for years. That is why I even said in my introduction, for some people it's a miracle, for some people it's a never. Do you understand? Yeah. But then what happens to the principle? There's a principle put for everyone to follow, and then the people follow that principle, but it doesn't seem to work. It's mysterious. And then for others, I made an example of children, teenagers that have reached adolescence. They have sex, they're just enjoying sex, but they don't want babies. They're not ready for babies. But then now, they just have a baby. A baby comes into being. What then? Do you understand? So now, that is why I say some people want babies, some people don't want babies, but babies come to those that don't want babies. It's just mysterious. Yeah. So now, I discussed things in the book that temper with the principles. Because there's things that temper with the principles that God has placed. Number one, it's God himself, his will. Wow. Number two, it's things that happen in the spiritual world that we don't know. Like, an example, witchcraft. Yeah. There's injustice generally in the world. Do you understand? So now we have such things that temper with systems, and then they make the system to seem as if it's not working at all. So as I said before, as I was starting, that though the book that I'm referring to, that is My Cross, is only dealing with conception, that is a journey to conception, but there's principles that we can learn there that apply to every sphere of our lives. Like what I'm saying, that things that temper with God's will, things that temper with systems that are placed by God for us to follow. It's God's will. God's will can temper with you. You can think you're supposed to go that way, but God wanted you to go that way in relation to anything in your life, not necessarily conception. Witchcraft can disturb you. Witchcraft can disturb you to an extent that you can end up not reaching your destiny at all if you don't know how to fight it. And injustice in the world. There's injustice everywhere. There's what do you call this? When people employ their own families? Nepotism. There's nepotism everywhere. You try by all means, you do everything, your CV is right, but then you don't get the job. So it's injustice that is tempered with the systems that God has put for us. Now there's questions that I have asked. There's rich homes, there's average homes, there's poor homes, there's excellent schools, there's good schools, and there's bad schools. There's first world countries, second world countries, and third world countries. There's the rich gang, there's average gang, and then there's hard laborers with little money, and then there's the poor, those that have nothing. There's top car owners, there's affordable car owners, and there's the public transport gang. In all these things, who determines which group we fall under? Who is in direct control of which group to fall under? If God is directly involved in what happens, if he is able to twist you and make you focus on that certain route, why would he not do that to the next person? These are the questions that I want us to ponder on. I want my in fact, I'm gonna entertain questions from my audience in studio, and I'm gonna try for us to discuss and everything like that. But I want us to think about this. Is God remote controlling us? Is he remote controlling us? Is he directly involved whether or not you do your homework or not? Is he directly involved whether or not you do research for your assignment? Does he make you pass your assignment? Do you understand?
Yes.
Now, my theory says God has placed these principles and patterns for us to follow instead of remote controlling the world. But of course, I'm going to want my audience to hear what they think of these things before I say my conclusion. And I'm going to try to entertain the questions as much as I can. And I also need your input, guys. This is deep, this is mysterious, and I want my YouTube followers to get it. Do you understand? So please help us to break this thing. Help us to unveil this thing as we get to the question and answer sessions. All right. So we have questions and comments in the studio. It's hot in here. So I'm going to hear the first question from the corner there.
Thank you, Mrs. H. I think it's a comment because in your book you mentioned something about other factors intercepting the will of God whatsoever. So now I want to refer to a certain scripture in the Bible, the book of Job, where it says, the life of a man upon the earth is warfare. That no matter how much good we can do, but there's still a battle. We still have to fight. Let's say you've done your part, you made a very good CV, you got the job. Then on the day of the interview, it just rains. So you must just try and fight, get an umbrella, try and go to the taxi, because you're trying to fight now. You did all things by the book, but you just have to fight. So I just wanted to pass that comment that no matter how good we can be, but we just have to fight, and the fight ends when your breath leaves your body.
Wow.
That's all.
Wow. Thank you so much for that comment. I really appreciate that, and I feel like it actually brings light to what we are discussing here tonight, because just that example of a CV, like for example, you gave an example of a rainy day, and you must just do what you can do. Like for an example, there's the example that I gave of what is that thing of employment again? Nepotism. Like you have your certificates, you have your CV, you are qualified for this post, and you know that you can get it. But then your CV, they just look at it and they know that they have someone for that post, and who is not you. And then what do you need to do now? You need to fight. Thank you so much for that comment. You need to fight. You need to invoke spiritual powers now. If you are a believer, if you believe in God, you need to pray over your CV. You need to pray that God may show favor on top of your CV and whatnot, and that God may open doors because you have done your part. But the trick is that God doesn't like a person that doesn't do their part. You can't just invoke spiritual powers if you do not do your part. Thank you so much. And we have another question in that corner.
Yes, Mrs. H. Well, thank you so much. When you were talking, you mentioned something about standards. So my question is, well, I always hear people say when they motivate people from poor backgrounds, they usually say it was God's will for you to grow like that, for you to have that kind of a background. Now my question is it always the case? And if it's not that, then what else can you say to that person?
To a person that grew in a poor background, and are they ambitious or or what? This
Maybe
this
they're
particular
just
person.
depressed or can't
Of
move.
their background.
Yeah, from that. And now, what can you say to
I would say to such a person, first of all, I don't disagree with the motivational speakers that it was God's will for you to be born from that kind of a background, because though it's not ideal, but a poor background, you can learn one or two things from it. Do you understand? It's what they always say. I think it's my husband that always says that a tough situation is not there to destroy you, but it's there to build muscles. Do you understand? So now you can learn one or two things, one or two survival strategies of which will help you even in the future. So now you mustn't despise that the fact that you were born from that kind of a background. And secondly, it's up to you what will happen in the future. Honestly, you need to stand up and fight. I really liked what our first speaker said tonight, that we are just in a war zone. Do you understand? So now you don't need to feel pity for yourself and just say, you know what, I'm born from this background and I will never be anything, I'll never amount to anything. You must look forward and decide on your future. You must just decide now, which gang do you want to fall under? Do you understand? Do you want to be a rich gang, average gang, or a poor gang? You can't decide where you are born, but you can decide where you are going. Thank you. Do we have another question or comment in the studio?
Thank you, Mrs. H. I have a comment as I was listening to your presentation and then giving us all the components about the book, and then I was driven to think that the conclusion, around the whole thing, it will go back to God. There's what we call the sovereignty of God. That if we do what is required from us, we'll have to wait for God to do his part. You see, like you talked about the thing of barrenness and whatnot, meaning which, what is from your book, yes. What is required from us as human beings or people that are married who want children? We need to do what we have to do, meaning which we need to do sex to the core. You see, if then the baby does not come, we go to the doctors. We are doing our part. But at the end of the day, if we have done our part, then we have to look at God so that he can do whatever that he wants to do. If it doesn't come, obviously, we need not to depress ourselves, but we need to leave it to his sovereignty. He knows what's best for us. If the baby comes, praise God. If it doesn't come, he knows better. And then we're going to know afterwards why hasn't he done what he promised to do if we do our part. Thank you.
Wow. Wow, I think that concludes everything. God's sovereignty. Above everything that we can try, above everything that we can do ourselves as human beings, we need to understand the power that God has given us. We need to understand the authority, the control that he has given us, and to do our part. I like what the speaker just said, that we do not need to neglect our part. Do your part to the core, and then let God do what you cannot do. Now, the mistake that we do as human beings, we employ God. We want God to do what we can do. Not like, honestly, do not pray for what you can do. You are wasting your time. You are wasting hours and hours of prayer asking God to drive the car for you. You can't say such things to God, but you can just say to God, God, I'm going to drive this car. But there's supernatural things that I do not see on the road. There's powers, there's witchcraft, there's whatnot, things that are planned in the spiritual realm that I can't see. That is what I want you to take care of. Do you understand? I'm going to prepare for my exam to the core. I'm going to make sure that I study. I'm aiming an A. But God, you see certain factors that I cannot see. You see that this lecturer does not like me from day one. You see that there's things, you see that I can't study well at home. You see that there's things that are over my power. Do you understand? Yes. Now that is when you need God. That is when you need him to do what you cannot do. But do your part to the core. Don't let God do your part. If God had time to remote control us and to do everything for us, would he have wasted his time to create us or even give us brains? Do you understand? That's my problem. Why did God give us brains if he's gonna do everything for us? If he's gonna cook food for us? If God must give you a job, God must budget for you, God must buy groceries for you, God must just do what you cannot do. All these things you can do. He gave us all the power, all the control, and all the dominion in the world. We must just understand. So now there's another thing as I close that I thought of, the fact that we can't just focus on working hard alone. Do you understand? Sometimes some people are fixated over this thing. You must work hard. You must work really hard. If you're going to sleep, you won't be rich. Okay, I understand that. I get that. But now we mustn't just focus on working hard alone, but we must also understand that God gave us authority and control over everything. If you can work hard at the mine, you must also have the mentality that you can own a mine. Do you understand? Yes. So if you can sell fruit, if you can sell potatoes, if you can bake pizzas and whatnot, but you must also understand that you can own a restaurant, you can own a farm, you can't just enjoy working at the farm. That I must work hard. God wants hard workers. I must work hard and whatnot. It doesn't depend on that alone, but it also depends on the understanding. We must pray for God to open our minds. We must pray that God may make us fruitful, because he declared it in the book of Genesis that be fruitful. He commanded it that be like this, take control, everything like that. So now I'm thinking, why are we being controlled by things? Why are we being controlled by debts? Why are we being controlled by poverty? Do you understand? So now we need to take charge. That is why I came up with this topic specifically for tonight, that we need to understand that God gave us dominion. We can control things. We can make things happen. Yes. He is not directly involved in our everyday lives, if I may put it that way. He wants us, he enjoys seeing us in charge. He enjoyed seeing Adam naming animals. He enjoyed seeing Adam taking full control of the Garden of Eden. Do you understand? He didn't want Adam to always ask, God, can I please get some apple? God, can I please get that? No, he wanted Adam to take charge. He wanted to see us take charge of the world, and we can just ask him to do what we cannot do. Do you understand? So now I wanted you to understand that, YouTubers, and thank you so much for tuning in even today, and I really appreciate all those that are following me. And up until our next topic, thank you very much. And don't forget to press the subscribe button, and you can get a copy of my book, My Cross, and it's just 150 rands after lockdown, of course, because we're still trying to get ways of putting it online for you. So for now, it's still hard copies. You can never regret getting yourself a copy of this book. Thank you so much. Until we meet again, God bless you. Bye.
Bye.